Hello, everybody. Welcome to Streamlining Android App Development and Mobile Release Best Practices webinar. My name is Laura Hauser. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bitrise, and we have a wonderful webinar for everyone here. A few little logistics. Anyone in the chat, can you just give me a quick wave or hello and let me know that you can hear us? Anybody? I will take that as a yes. All right, good to go. Well, we have a great agenda. We can hear perfect. Slight delay, guys, got me scared for a minute. But what I'm going to do is hop into the agenda right now. Essentially, we have an action-packed content for you today. First, we're going to have a presentation on how to streamline Android development, followed by a panel Q&A and an audience Q&A. So we're very excited to hear from all of you and answer your questions, as much of them as we can. So if you wouldn't mind moving forward, Tamas. But first and foremost, I'd like to welcome and introduce our speakers. I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're here today. And first off, I'm going to hand it over to Brian, who's going to give us a little intro about his experience and why he's here today.
Well, hello, everyone. It's good to join you today. I'm Brian Reed. I'm the SVP of Mobile Defense here at Appdome. If you've been around mobile for a long time, you may have come across me before. I've been doing mobile apps and security dating back to BlackBerry almost 20 years. And I'm excited to be here today to talk about how to automatically build security into your mobile apps during this conversation. So it's nice to meet everyone. Next, I'd like to introduce Vasiliy. Vasiliy, would you like to welcome the folks?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. I'm Vasiliy. I'm an Android developer and I'm also a content creator. So I write a popular blog about Android and created several courses on Udemy. And next, I'll hand it off to Tamas.
Thank you so much. I'll jump on to the next slide as well. So I'm Tamas, working at Bitrise as a solutions engineer. My career started as a full stack developer, then I moved on to the manual QA side of things. I started to work on test automation, Appdome, Selenium robot framework, and quite a few manual testing, then moved over to the mobile development side as well. And more than 6 years ago, I joined Bitrise as a support engineer, and roughly 3 years ago, I moved over to the solutions engineering team, basically helping our customers and prospects tackle their daily CI/CD challenges. Let's jump into the presentation agenda. So I'm going to talk a bit about some of the biggest challenges that we see during the events that Android developers are facing. Then we are going to look at a crawl, walk, run, fly approach of different improvements, which is a really, really awesome way of visualizing the whole thing that I got from one of my previous colleagues. We'll look at internal and external releases, and we'll keep the questions to the very end. Yeah, so let's jump into the different challenges. So if you attend DroidCon events, you would most probably met us at one of the events this year. We were asking at DroidCon Berlin what are the main issues that Android developers are facing. And these were the three main things. One is testing and debugging, basically automated testing, being a part of a successful CI/CD setup, having a stable test environment so that they are able to deliver with higher quality. This was one of the top questions and issues that they listed basically when they responded to our surveys. The second one is build times. This is something that I personally see as well on a daily basis. Even if you have a fast build, making it faster, making it do more is always on top of everybody's mind. Some of the responses that we got were improving the build speed, reducing build time, and improving the build times across all the different repos that they are working on. And the third part, or the third issue, was constant Android updates and changes, basically keeping up with the latest Android development environment and marketplace changes. Um, for example, like quick changes and build frequent UI or daily changes in APIs, basically making sure that everything is functioning correctly and everything is working perfectly fine. Let's move on to the improvement possibilities that I talked about a couple of seconds ago. So crawling is basically automating your CI/CD solution. Walking is parallelizing the execution itself. Running is basically there for dependency caching, and the fly part is remote caching or alternate build systems. Let's talk about automated CI. What does that mean? Basically, you are automating through continuous integration and continuous delivery. You are able to build and release fast to achieve a reliable and frequent release schedule. The continuous integration part is therefore merging code in the repository, compiling and testing it. And the continuous delivery is there to ensure that everything is always in a releasable state. This sounds great, but why does this make sense? Happy customers, of course, which is the cornerstone of every successful business. Um, by giving them better bug-free user experience, they are more likely to choose your product. New features and faster. This is also one of the key things that happy customers are looking for. The second part is increased developer productivity. There is less firefighting. You don't have to worry so much about incidents. You can focus on creating new features. There is less context switching, meaning that you don't have to manually work on the CI/CD setup, basically running all those different builds on one of the developers' machines. They can pass it on to the CI, and that handles it, and basically more time to spend coding. And the third one is quicker recovery from any kind of incidents. Basically, through automation, you are able to decrease the time that is required to resolve any kind of incidents. Because even if you are pushing out some kind of fix, you want to make sure that that fix isn't breaking something maybe even more crucial than what was already broken. And how can we achieve this? Of course, one side is definitely the infrastructure, ensuring that the infrastructure is up to date, fast enough, there is enough firepower behind it. The next part is looking at how we can achieve this. As I mentioned, the hardware is definitely a crucial part. You need basically Mac machines to develop for iOS applications and create builds. And on the Android side, you can either use Mac or Linux. You need to set up the networking. You need to set up basically the racks, the power for the machines, and making sure that everything is functioning correctly in that environment. You need to ensure that you are working in a consistent environment. Good example is if you start a build and download something, and there is some kind of flakiness there, or something is corrupted with that specific file, then you start changing that given file on the file system of the build machine. You don't want to get into a situation where you onboard a new machine that would re-download that resource and it is still failing the build, and you get inconsistency even between the two different machines. Virtualization is a really, really great way to ensure that you are consistently getting the same environment. For this, you need to make sure that you have a process for creating and distributing the virtual machine images, and you have to make sure you have a lifecycle management in place to ensure that you are not reusing the virtual machines, instead rolling back and always using a clean one. The next part is the build agent, basically the build orchestration, all the different steps for actually building the application and ensuring that all the integrations are in place and are served by the CI/CD setup. And the last one is basically a team to manage the whole automation at scale. As your code base starts to grow, you definitely will need a larger machine park, and you need to make sure that the team is able to handle that. Yeah, let's look at how we can achieve this in real life. For example, workflow editor, which on Bitrise's side is there to basically provide a list of different integrations that are managed by either Bitrise or some of our partners like Appdome, or managed by the open source community. But there are other useful tools as well. For example, like Fastlane, which allows you to have portable configurations that you would be able to run on your CI setup or locally as well. And you can also have a YAML configuration to ensure that the source code itself of the CI/CD setup is kept in a Git repository and goes through the same validation steps as any kind of source code changes. And let's jump to the next slide. I wanted to bring some further data on what we gathered during the events that we are attending. So this chart basically shows you how much time different teams are spending on simply waiting for builds to complete. You can see that 47% spends more than an hour on simply just waiting for builds, and 29.1% spends less than 1 minute on waiting for builds to finish. It is quite crucial to look at the build times and ensure that it is really fitting well into the developer experience. So as the next part, we are going to talk about improving the build automation, basically why it makes sense to start improving the automation setup, and how you can also start improving it on your own setup as well. The first part is basically the builds are taking longer to run. This is a natural thing. Your application is growing, more dependencies, more tests are being run. This is something that in itself prolongs the execution. You want to increase the developer throughput as well. Bigger teams basically, sorry, bigger teams have basically a higher cost of waiting, and the competitive market is growing continuously as well. And you want to do more with less. With the current economic climate, this is a must-have. All of the companies are focusing on this right now, at least all of those that I'm in a conversation with. And you still need to ship more features, even though the circumstances are tougher than they were previously. So let's look at the possible improvement option. One of my favorites is parallelization. Basically, you are running different tasks in parallel. And all of these parallel executions are happening on different executors. They may communicate with each other, but that's not necessarily a must-have. A really good example is, for example, building your testable artifact and then sharing it to 3 different executors and then running the tests in parallel. It also helps organize the entire CI/CD process, so you differentiate between testing jobs and building jobs and all the different test suites. And it can quite heavily improve the wall clock time of builds by running the tasks in parallel on different executors. Why does it make sense? You get faster PR feedback. Basically, the wall clock time is decreased. The parallelization is basically speeding up the whole process. And you can also use test sharding to have faster test executions. It is easier to debug. You can rerun flaky tests without any rerun of the entire pipeline. And it is basically faster and cheaper to debug these issues on their own. And the last part is quicker setup for subsequent flows and apps. So if you want to add a new test suite, you just need to drop in a new workflow that executes that instead of rebuilding the whole thing again from scratch. Key takeaways, you can basically achieve same usage costs or quite similar usage costs, but quite heavily decrease the wall clock time. For example, one of my tests that I set up on a previous webinar was taking 36 minutes to execute on 5 different test devices in a single workflow, but by using pipelines and splitting up into multiple parallel tests executors, I managed to push that down um, to basically 9 minutes at that specific execution. And this is another example on one of our other testing apps. You can see that the execution would have been around 8 minutes altogether, but instead of that, it finished within 4 minutes. Let's move on to the run phase, which is dependency caching. Um, how does dependency caching look? You would be able to basically use a key value cache where you are storing the contents of the cache archive based on specific cache that can be easily found later on. You can put basically anything into this cache. It's quite frequently focuses on the most used files, for example, dependencies. But you can also add build tools or configuration cache or anything else. And for the next part, let's look at the fly phase, which consists of remote caching. So what is a remote cache? A remote cache is basically used by a team and or a CI system to share the different build outputs. Yeah, how does that look? A developer starts a build. That build downloads the task outputs that are already present in the build cache. Then the build runs and uploads any kind of outputs that are generated during the build. And the same thing happens locally. So the local machines would be able to reuse the same generated artifacts that are already in the build cache. Yeah, why does it make sense to use caching? Is it worth the effort? Yes, you can achieve exponentially faster build times. The consistency and reliability for large teams increases heavily. You get improved developer happiness, simply because of the speed itself. What are some bottlenecks? Network latency is one of the largest bottlenecks that you can face. The geographic distance, the cache read speed, the network protocol, all of these play a huge role um, in the speed up that you can achieve through remote build cache solution. And of course, the implementation time is quite crucial as well. So for build cache itself, I wanted to bring our own example. I listed quite a few technical details in here. I don't necessarily want to go into all of these, but for example, what you can achieve with super fast CI setup is in an ideal case around 95% improvement on a clean build. What I usually see with customers is around a 30 to 60% improvement. We also created a CDN infrastructure that allows faster access from local machines, fully managed solution, which is basically integrated into the CI side of things, and gRPC streaming over HTTP as well, which allows faster network communication. Yeah, and I wanted to show one of our sample apps as well, where the execution time dropped from 11 minutes to a bit more than 4 minutes. So it can achieve quite a good speed up. And to bring another example, one of our ideal case examples is Amaze File Manager, which was the sample application. The original build time was 28 minutes, and we managed to push it down to a bit less than 4 minutes. Perfect. How can we even improve these specific times? Looking at the critical path, you can see it right here. These colored tasks are the ones that are part of the critical path. These basically mean that they are dependent on each other and take the longest. If we can optimize these, we can speed up the build time. And on our UI, we provide an option as well to look into the task executions and find what you can optimize to speed up the builds. I listed here a couple of common issues like the version code, dynamic environment variables that are quite common causes to rebuild different tasks. If you want to further optimize your caching solution, you would be able to look at these specific points. And yeah, for the final part of my part of the presentation, I wanted to talk quickly about app distribution as well as the final point in the flow. So distributing iOS and Android apps internally and to app stores as fast and as efficiently as possible. This is what goes into app distribution. And another quick survey result. So as most of you most probably know, Microsoft App Center is sunsetting in March 2025. So we asked if the release processes are automated at the survey attendees, and 27% said that it's not, and 72 mentioned that it is already automated, which is quite a good result, but it could be a bit better as always. Yeah, and what are the main challenges that the different teams are facing? Internal app distribution, especially because of App Center closing down, store distribution, transparency, and customization are the main issues that our customers are facing, or developers usually are facing. And I wanted to share a couple of options how these can be addressed. For the internal app distribution, it's basically sharing the what to test sections, private and public install pages, share builds with testers. These are all supported by different steps of ours. And for the store distribution, our release management option, our add-on, is also providing a great way to submit your apps to the different stores to manage metadata and automate staged or phased rollouts. For the transparency part, there is the release manager role that we introduced as well. Gated releases for internal stakeholders, approvals, notification messages, integrating feature flag management, and for the customization side of things, basically triggering different CI executions based on all the different release events that are happening and integrations with other tools through an API. Yeah, basically all of these super handy features are available within Bitrise's release management solution, where we are trying to put together a kind of mission control that allows you to follow through the release process from step one until it reaches the different stores. And I'm going to hand over to Brian.
Wonderful. Before we hand things over to Brian, we wanted to hear from you guys. We know that, and of course, one of the topics of this webinar is how do you ensure security without sacrificing speed? So if you would bear with us, wanted to start a poll. If everyone can see that and fill in your information in terms of what does security slow down in your pipeline?
Yeah, so thanks for launching the poll there, Laura. I'm Brian Reed from Appdome. We talked earlier. I've been doing mobile development and mobile security since the days of BlackBerry, more recently, and iOS and Android, obviously. The DroidCon events have been fantastic this year in terms of working with developers and the challenges and the pains that have gone through. I think that Tamas started with a great summary of the Berlin DroidCon feedback. We saw similar feedback in some of the other geos. And, you know, at those events, Appdome talked a lot with developers about their frustrations of the challenges of keeping up with security or demands of security or demands of the business related to security, when that feature flow and the faster releases is often the most important thing to do. So I thought getting started today with where does security slow you down will help kind of tee up how we can speed that up. We just heard a lot about automation at many different incremental steps in the process. Let's try to make that easier from the security perspective as well. So hopefully everybody's answered the poll so we can take a look at the results as I see them on the screen here. I'm not surprised that about half of you said it was in the coding phase. Generally what trips up organizations besides coding is the security testing part, because your security team's going to go do some testing and then they'll come back and give you a bunch of bugs to fix, and you might have some arm wrestling over what's really a bug and what should you really fix, and is this a feature or a bug, and all those things that we've been through, right? So thank you very much for the poll. I think what I'd like to talk a little bit about is to extend Tamas's conversation about automation. If we think about what automation is really all about, it's about automating the work out of building Android apps. It's about how do you take friction out of the machine. And we saw a number of ways to do that already. We saw automating the work from parallelization and using the build cache and better release management and distribution, right? Let's all look at this. We all wish mobile security was easier, okay? I've written mobile code. I've become more of a security expert and a security champion. And I know it's hard to be a security engineer. I know it's hard to write code the right way. So if we can advance the slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can do this, right? So I'm an old whiteboard guy, so I'm always drawing diagrams of how to solve problems. So here's your classic pipeline, right? And a lot of you answered the pain was in the code step, right? So as we think about running through the pipeline, you have some flow that looks like this. You're using Bitrise as your CI/CD and your release manager, and so on and so forth. You might be using a variety of testing tools, design tools, and all the rest. So as we go to the next slide, the reality is in that set of questions of where does it slow you down, on the next slide, the reality is every single point along this pipe can slow you down. So can we advance to the next slide, please? Back one, sorry. And so, here's really the pain, right? So is there even standards for what secure code or security requirements are? How are we writing the code? Do the engineers even understand how to properly write secure code? Everyone hates doing certificate pinning, for example, which is required to really secure your network communications and so on and so forth. Builds can slow you down. We saw how to speed them up today, which is awesome. Security testing can lag and really give you unpredictable surprises. Pretty much every development team that I work with is surprised by new security bugs that are found in the testing cycle, which then creates that painful loop that often leads to arguing about which should be fixed and what priority, and do I get a security exception and all that other fun stuff, trying to get it out the door. As a general rule, also, most organizations really don't have a sense of what the attack patterns are and what the safe data to protect and what the bad guys are going after. So you're kind of flying blind, right? So what we want to do is eliminate all these nasty points of friction in the pipeline, and automation is the way to do that. So if we can move to the next slide, just like we've seen with Bitrise today, there is a way to automate big chunks of this work. Now, I joined Appdome about 6 months ago, and I've been in the mobile development, mobile security testing space, the pen testing space, security champion space. And what I found with Appdome is there's a way to completely eliminate all the work for a developer. I'll say that again, completely eliminate all the security work for the developer. So Appdome's built a machine learning engine that will automatically code and automatically build all the security features into your mobile apps. Basically, it's like policy as code. Your security team goes in and throws a few switches. You plug it into Bitrise. Bitrise does the build, passes us the file. We then build in all the security controls. You get a certified, these are the valid security controls and defenses that are in your app, and you're off and running. And oh, by the way, after you release the app, now you can actually monitor to see what attacks are occurring. I'm not expecting any of you as a developer to sit there and stare at a screen that says what attacks are happening to me. Your security team can monitor that for you. But that actually will tell you what security features to build next based on what kinds of attacks are occurring against your app. If you're in retail, there are a lot of Android-based attacks that are going after retailers around fraud. And they're using things like overlay techniques and impersonation techniques to execute fraud. Fraud isn't always a vulnerability. It's usually some sort of abuse of your application. It can be pretty hard to detect, pretty hard to figure out how to defend. With Appdome, you push a button and it's there for you. So we have been working with Bitrise for a number of years in the mobile space, and we very much believe in the incremental path of automation. We're here to bring you automation in your pipeline. So we can just jump to the last slide and we'll move on. So Appdome is a unified defense platform. So all the great build to release you've seen with Bitrise, we bring from the security and defense perspective. It's point and click easy. Developers don't have to write any code. The Bitrise system just calls us and we do the work for you. So happy to talk with more of you offline about this as we evolve. I look forward to our Q&A going forward.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. That was quite a lot of information. And we really appreciate your time and walking us as the audience through it. Just to let everyone know, if you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat and we'll make sure to get to it in our, well, now our Q&A part of the webinar. Vasiliy, I would like to start with you. And this question was actually brought to us by one of your many X or Twitter followers. So what is, in your experience, where's the best place to get started with CI, specifically for the Android ecosystem?
Okay, tricky question. So to answer, I'll start with a disclaimer that I've had a business relationship with Bitrise. So say that.
I was going to say, hopefully that's an easy answer, but
yeah, say that. I do think that Bitrise, at least from the tools that I used, is the simplest one, and the reason for that is their UI drop and drop features. So If you use one of the bigger players, you will need at least learn their specific DSL, domain specific language. And Bitrise has that as well, but they also have the drag and drop features. So basically, if you want to set up CI pipeline on Bitrise for your hobby project or you're on a smaller team, pretty much the only two features that you need to know is how to let Bitrise pull your code from GitHub, GitLab, or wherever it is, and how to set up basically a trigger, right? So webhook trigger, and that's it. The rest you do like drag and drop, so that will be the easiest one.
Amazing. And can you recommend any best practices, whether it's Bitrise or another CI, when you're thinking about implementing a CI for Android? Anything tool agnostic that you think our attendees should be aware of?
Well, I would say the simplest, the best. So people often go and look at the big players, read blogs from the big companies or popular developers trying to implement crazy complex CI pipelines in their 1-2% projects. So start simple and grow with your needs. The more you invest into your CI, the less you develop features. So you need to balance that. And as your business grows, as your company grows, then surely you need more and more mature, more and more sophisticated CI pipeline.
Absolutely. And I'm curious. We've talked a bit. Clearly, security is a big concern in 2024 and likely in 2025. Brian, from a developer's perspective, what are some of the best practices for making sure that your mobile apps? You spoke about it a little bit, but want to expand on anything, and basically in an easy way that doesn't add a ton of complexity.
Yeah, so I think there's the level of understanding of what security and privacy things matter for your class of application, right? And some of you may have done threat modeling, some of you may not have. As a general rule, if you're doing financial transactions in your application, you should do basic threat modeling to make sure you understand how to keep the identity and the transaction elements secure. Google has done a really good job. The Android team has continued to build out more and more security features, which make that easier and easier for you, right, to make a more reliable applications. So that's one point. I think the other thing is that the days of handwriting code are kind of over for doing everything yourself. So much like we turn to CI/CD, developers turn to CI/CD platforms really to automate so much of that work that we just saw today, including the great enhancements from Bitrise, automate security work too. Right. In that way, that allows you to rely on proven security that'll do the work the right way for you, whether you're worried about network encryption or proper storage or proper handling of permissioning or the other things. You don't have to become a security expert when you're using the security automation tools. They'll do the work for you. You just tell them the profile of your app. I'm doing a financial transaction. I'm a retail app. I have identity information. I need to meet GDPR requirements, whatever those things are, and the machine can do the work for you. I'm very excited about the advancements coming out now with the level of automation between the platforms like Bitrise and Appdome that really make it easier for the developer to focus on delivering cool new features fast, and everything just works under the hood.
Yeah, it's interesting because security is one of those things that you almost don't know. You don't want to be in a situation where you realize when it's too late that you should have had something in place beforehand. Vasiliy, sort of back to you. We've talked a bit about sort of choosing a CI/CD solution, but we know that hosting and deployment options clearly have an impact on speed as well. I would say, in what circumstances, should you self-host the CI process? Like, what are the options, and how should our attendees thinking about, picking the option that's best for them?
Well, in my opinion, you should self-host your CI infrastructure only if you are a multi-billion corporation and your security team insists on that. So, fortunately, most of the times when I saw that, it usually works worse than some professional, some SaaS like Bitrise or whatever, and adds a lot of work to everyone is involved. So that's something, in my opinion, should be reserved to the biggest companies out there. And even then, I would question the utility of that. So yeah, just if you can manage that, don't self-host your CI solution.
Gotcha. And Tamas, I know that you work with a lot of our customers as a solutions engineer. Do you have any advice for choosing the right solution that is best for them?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. One thing that I would suggest is look at your requirements first. Basically, what we are doing during POCs as well in the sales cycle is we look at what actually matters for the prospects, customers who we are working with, and making a list of that. If you have that list, then that will make your life much, much easier when you are looking into different CI/CD providers and evaluating on your own, for example, because you have a list where you can basically turn a super hard question into just a matter of how many checks are there. Does this check all of the boxes that I have? And basically base your decision on that. So yeah, I think that's the biggest one.
Absolutely. And we talked quite a bit about automation today, and we've had a couple questions from social media that people have pulled. What is your, and specifically this is Vasiliy, what is your approach to automating and releasing artifacts specifically for Android libraries? I know that this is a complex question, but if you were to kind of I'd say condense it into best practices for automation across your CI for Android, what would that be?
Well, specifically for libraries, it's like a niche of the niche, and because not that many people do that. But generally speaking, I would separate it into two parts. One, releasing internal libraries. So that will be something consumed by other teams in the organization. For that, you would use something like Artifactory. And they're also releasing public libraries, open source, for example. And for that, you would integrate with one of the Maven hostings.
Mhm.
Even though today I think we're pretty much down to one or two. So there are not that many popular options out there. And yeah, there are scripts that you can use, integrate into your CI pipeline. And as usual in mobile development, just automating the release is like one of the hardest things to do, because usually you wouldn't be ready to do the continuous deployment in mobile. Usually you would like to test that. Again, unless you are a very big team that has all the CI perfectly set up with unit tests, integration tests, all the testing suites, then yeah, for sure. But in general, if you're a smaller team or you're an individual developer releasing your own third-party open source libraries, I would say maybe you can do it yourself manually once in a while when you do that.
Sounds good. And very good advice. So, to bring it back a little bit, Brian, for security, and we also wanted to ask our audience, one of the questions when you're trying to balance how much you should invest in security or not is really, and we'll begin the poll now. Let's see if we can drop it to the screen. How much do Android app users really care about security and privacy? Please let us know from the audience, and maybe while Brian can talk a little bit about how to think about this when you're, making some of these decisions from the development perspective.
Yeah, it's always a good question, right? So when you think about business making priorities with resources and feature requirements, right, they're balancing all kinds of business necessities, right? So maybe you're building a new mobile app in order to service your customers better. Maybe you're taking your existing app and expanding functionality. I've been working with a number of fast food commercial businesses who are looking to shift to buy food on phone and either pick it up in the store or have it delivered, much the way like Starbucks does for coffee in the US. And so as they start to think about it, well, do those end users really care about anything related to safety and privacy, or they really focus more on the feature of how do I easily place my order and so on and so forth? And so I think our poll has a really interesting answer, which is almost everybody said a lot or some, and it's about a 50-50 break. So what we've actually learned, Appdome has been doing consumer surveys on security and privacy now for the last 4 years. And what we have, and we'll be providing a download link for you in a follow-up to the event, is the actual data on what consumers care about. And what's very interesting this year, we have about 120,000 consumers in 12 countries that have been surveyed in Asia, in Latin America, in Europe, and the US, is that consumers have a bigger fear of fraud than security and privacy, and that consumers hold developers and mobile app companies responsible for protecting them, and that something like 78 to 82% of consumers will abandon using a mobile app if they hear of or experience themselves something related to a breach or a fraud experience or what have you. So as you think about I'm glad that everybody said a lot or some, and there was only 5% that said not at all. The consumer report data that we have that we'll share with you is something you can take back to the business and say, look, consumers actually do care. Here is real survey data of consumers in these countries, and let's think about how to make sure we're doing enough to protect those people as part of it, right? In Europe, we have GDPR. In the US, there's various laws like CCPA that are privacy. There's various anti-fraud laws running around. But in the end, we want to make sure that we're delivering really great user experiences that are safe, right? So thank you for the
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to, the worst experience you can have as a user is learning that an app that you've downloaded has, put you at risk for identity theft or stolen your payment, anything really under the sun. I'm going to jump quickly to our Q&A questions and let our audience know if you have any additional ones. Please feel free to drop them in the chat. But from Rama, where can we get practical training for mobile release CI/CD in Bitwise? I'm assuming means Bitrise, but thank you for thinking that we are wise. I would say probably Tamas, our dev center has a ton of resources. And I guess, Tamas, if you have any insight, and Vasiliy, maybe some of those Udemy courses could be relevant as well. But I'll let you guys answer that one.
Yeah, definitely on the Bitrise side, our dev center contains quite a few getting started guides. So I would say that's a really good point to jump into it. If you start using Bitrise as well, we also have a contact us form where you would be able to reach out with any kind of questions, issues. And we also have a forum where basically the community is there to support each other. And the same goes for our public Slack as well. So there are lots and lots of places where you can gather information. Feel free to choose any of these. And we are more than happy to help you however we can.
Fantastic. So any other resources, Bitrise or agnostic, that would be good for someone trying to get started for mobile CI/CD?
Unfortunately, I don't have much to add. I learned the CI/CD the hard way, basically doing the thing. So,
well, maybe we have some demand to partner on some training courses in the future. Moving on, and we have quite a popular question that I want to get to from Shayla. Where can I find more information on how to set up the test parallelization that was mentioned in speeding up build times? Tamas, I feel like that's in your court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on our Dev Center, there is a pipeline section, and I didn't think of turning on the lights in time. So whenever I'm opening up a new tab, it looks like I'm in the night. But I just posted a link to it here in the chat. But yeah, if you have any questions or any issues, feel free to reach out as well. And feel free to ping me.
Amazing.
and on this topic, I will just add that it's actually quite a challenging topic, parallelization, because it involves both breaking down your load into parallelizable pieces and also then introducing parallelization at the hardware level, let's say, or the software level, to have multiple machines, because just doing one of these things will not be sufficient. So it's great to have good resources on this topic.
Awesome. And, sifting through some of these, is there any documentation describing more details on how to analyze like the Gradle chart and set up remote caching?
Yeah.
We're just keeping Tamas busy with posting links.
Yeah. This is going to be almost the same answer, but still it's on our remote, on our dev center. So we have quite extensive contents on caching as well. Some of the last parts for the different suggestions was basically pulled from the web UI that we are displaying there. There are quite a few built-in parts of our caching solution that you can use to analyze cache hit rates and how you can speed up the processes even further. And you can basically use the caching solution with other CIs as well. So that would be definitely an option on that front.
And again, I will just mention something exceptionally difficult to do, because even if you do set up caching manually, oftentimes, at least the one time that I saw manual setup of the local caches, it actually was counterproductive. So it's like people, at least in that instance, people set up this cache without actually then measuring its impact.
Fantastic. And I know we have a few more questions, but we are running low on time. I think we're a bit over. So thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. But we will answer those directly, reach out. And thank you so much for being so engaged. But before we kind of wrap things up, or we're about to wrap things up, this really goes out to everyone in our wonderful panel today. But we've talked about several ways to make Android development more efficient, impactful, and secure. From your perspective, if the webinar attendees today remember one thing that we've talked about today, what would it be in your opinion? And maybe we can kick things off with you, Brian.
Sorry, I was on mute there. You guys had a good thing going. One thing to remember, I think security isn't hard when you leverage automation. It's probably the one thing to think. And whether you're using Appdome or someone else, there are automated security tools that can make your life easier that didn't exist a year ago or 2 years ago. So take the time to look at what you can do to simplify that.
Very good advice. Automate as much as you can. Vasiliy, what are your thoughts?
I will go with what we already said, that I'd recommend to keep it as simple as your requirements allow. So don't overcomplicate, don't copy stuff from the big guys just because you find it fascinating. Keep it as simple as you can manage, and it will spare you a lot of time, and let it grow together with your business, with your team size, with your company bureaucracy. Sometimes it's fine. It will come to you, don't worry.
Keep the faith. And Tamas, what about you?
Maybe I think one of the key takeaways is knowledge sharing. That could be super useful. We talked about quite a lot during today's session within a really low amount of time. There are still lots of crucial and super useful resources. Going on the different forums, going on different events, getting to know people and getting a hold of those resources is, I think, crucial in leveling up your game on CI/CD and in general knowledge as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all of our wonderful panelists today. It was really engaging conversation, and thank you to our audience who not only participated, but really gave us a lot to think about, and now content that we'll be sure to share post the webinar. So with that, thank you everyone, and whether you're joining at the end of the day or you're just beginning your morning, we appreciate your time. Bye everyone.
Thanks, everyone.